Hello and welcome to show 5 of Flashbang Wallop. Thanks very much for all of your subscriptions that we're seeing coming in and people logging on to see the show again going forwards. I have my 3 trusty colleagues with me tonight. Neil, how you doing?
Good evening. Hello. I'm good. All good. Been a busy week, photographically anyway.
Great. Damo, how you doing?
Very good. Just come back from holiday in Anglesey. Well, many photo opportunities and enjoyed myself. And I had a busy weekend, so I've enjoyed lots of photographing as well.
So you took the camera with you. It didn't just go on holiday and sit in a bag somewhere. You actually used it.
No, I took the camera with me, and the big camera was used for a sunrise at one of the lighthouses, and then did a few other things with the iPhone and stuff. So it was really good. And
Good.
this picture got made BBC Wales as well.
Again, this is
Yeah,
getting
I got that
boring.
one on BBC Wales. Yeah.
Have you got a map
one.
on the wall with all the locations, all the different BBC regions, and which one you've managed to go?
I'm doing a presentation for a local dining club, and what I'm doing is I've got all the locations, and I've got a different categories of where I've taken photographs.
Yeah. Not content with BBC England, he's moved on to BBC Wales as well now.
Onwards and westwards.
That's right. It'll be on CBS next. And Ian, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Yeah, I haven't done an awful lot photography-wise, unfortunately. I tell you what, I do a lot of is you say about you took the camera with you. I do tend to take my tripod quite a lot for a walk and not use it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, my tripod's been on holiday all around the world, and come back saying thank you very much, I wasn't used. Okay, so tonight we're going to have a couple of bits of news that we spotted when we've been trawling through the interweb. We've got a few new bits of kit we want to discuss, and then afterwards we're going to talk about lighting, which is, without light, you've got a big black square picture. So we're going to talk about lighting, and we even have a question from a viewer. So, whoa! We'll all jump onto that.
It's pressure, though, isn't it? It's pressure.
Yeah,
I don't like that.
It is. So James will be coming back to you later on in the show. Okay, so let's move on to news items that we've seen. Let's kick off. I think, Ian, should we start off with this thing in Japan?
Yeah, a couple of bits of news coming out of Japan. The first one being that Sony is now #1 apparently for interchangeable lens cameras, with Canon in second place. Canon still dominates the SLR market, which I can't imagine that's much of a market though, is it these days? So I don't think that's much to shout about. And Kodak is big again, apparently.
Yes, I saw that.
Japan.
A
lot of people.
Aren't they sort of the disposable market and the film market?
Yeah, they're doing a lot of these like cheaper sort of compact digital cameras, aren't they? That seem to be going down quite well. And then that ties in with sort of another piece of news, which was sort of camera sales are just sort of massively down. I mean, there was a couple of stats that I found interesting from this Digital Camera World story. Was the first one being that only 48.6 of households now own a camera, which actually sounds quite a lot, but the article quite rightly says how many of those 48% of people are actually taking those cameras out and they're not just sitting in the drawers at home. And the other one I found quite staggering was the Camera and Imaging Products Association, also based in Japan, reports that domestic shipments of digital cameras have fallen from 11.11 million units in 2008 to only 910,000 today.
Wow.
I mean, that is phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we all obviously.
I suppose that's got to be with the phone manufacturers so heavily investing in photography on there, and they, I jokingly said in a review to someone, does this new phone actually make a phone call? Because it's never ever mentioned, is it? It's all about AI, the camera system, that kind of stuff. I still use my phone, surprisingly, to make phone calls. It's still that specific for me.
I enjoy actually seeing youngsters and actually how they use the phone. So many are like a phone like this or not like this, or
and then they wonder why they're grabbed by passing cyclists and moped nickers and all that kind of stuff. But going back to the camera side of it, the photographic ability of cameras now, of phones, I mean, is absolutely stupendous. We're going to talk about light later on in the show, and Damo has already said use a phone rather than problems trying to sort out with the light. But we'll come back to that. But the sales down from what is 11 to under 1 is quite. It must be quite devastating for the manufacturers. And you mentioned the Sony are now is that biggest in digital DSLRs?
In interchangeable lens cameras.
Right. So then maybe not DSLRs. They could be.
No, the actual article says that Canon is still the number one for digital SLRs. But I mean, I should imagine that's a small market now, because who's buying an SLR now? Everyone's going sort of mirrorless, aren't they? So I'm not sure that
certainly on the new market.
Yeah. Okay. And on top of that, they say the switch away from big, heavy, cumbersome proper cameras, as we like to call them, is moving toward you. Even yourself, Damo, you've got your nice little Fuji, haven't you?
Yes, I mean there's been a big
stunning pictures with.
Explosion might be the wrong word, but there's been an increase in sales of compact cameras. People like compact. Even Ian had that on a show not so long ago, saying that he liked his Panasonic because he wanted something to take away as a travel camera that would do the job, and he wouldn't have to lug something really heavy around. I mean, in Anglesey, I lugged all my cameras down to the seafront, set everything up, all the filters and stuff, and then I mooched around with the iPhone to take pictures of locations so that I can go back. I was desperate to post the best picture with the big camera, but the one that got the reaction was the iPhone picture. The algorithm had obviously sorted out the colors much better than me trying to faff around with all the filters and stuff. I mean, some people are very good at doing those, but
Damo, is that an iPhone shot behind you?
Yes, that's an iPhone shot behind.
Yeah, because I think often what you find is, with an SLR, and by the time you faffed around getting the tripod low and all of that and the filters and everything, you just, it's so easy to take the phone and just go down to the floor and click, isn't it? And it's that convenience, isn't it?
Arguably, the first thing you should do is to take your iPhone out or whatever your phone is out and walk around and snap shots.
Yeah.
If you shouldn't get your tripod out first and stick it down.
No.
You don't know what the view is. And the iPhone, it's like a 24mm image from a camera lens. So you can walk around.
There's a great app for the iPhone I use a lot. I think it's literally called Viewfinder, and you can put in your sensor size, then you can put in a load of presets of focal lengths. You can literally use it as a I wonder what that scene would look like at 200mm. Now, obviously, when you look at it through the iPhone at 200mm, it's all pixelated, but it just gives you what it would look like at 200mm. Before you've bothered getting the camera out, putting the 70 to 200 on and going, is it worth taking a shot? You can just or the other thing I do is if I'm out walking, I think, that might be a shot in future. What lens might I need? And you use the app, and you can. Next time maybe I need the 150 to 600 or whatever, and it's a brilliant little app actually.
Yeah,
we might have to change the podcast to Flashbang Wallop slide to the left. So it's
yeah.
Okay. Moving on. The other thing that we looked at in the news. Oh, the astronauts. The astronauts using your beloved Z9. See this.
I knew they'd taken one up there because they'd been testing it because they've got it in some sort of special enclosure for taking out in space. But yeah, Ian highlighted this.
Yeah, they've got a whole
stock in there for me.
They've got a whole stock of them up there. From the pictures I've seen, they've got about a dozen cameras and bodies up there, different types, for the astronauts to use. Part of it is to do the works they're doing, but also just getting some, the absolute perfect Google shot of your house on Earth, isn't it? Well, there you are from 112 miles up. It doesn't get much better than that. So
the Digital Camera World article's got a shot of the Soyuz space capsule docked with the International Space Station with the Aurora behind it. I mean, it's just phenomenal. Taken on the Z9.
There's one with the Milky Way as well.
I'll show
It's
this up
incredible.
here. But I suppose the Milky Way won't look as good because there's no atmosphere to affect it, is there? Isn't a lot of the colour that you see for the Milky Way affected by our atmosphere?
Oh, you got me there.
Yeah, I'm not
Admittedly,
sure.
there's always that famous picture of the three horseshoes in the Orion Nebula. That have you not seen that one? I'll try and find it here, which is an absolutely stunning photograph taken. That's taken with the Hubble. Oh,
Yeah, I
that
remember
must be
that
now
one.
30 years ago. Hubble went up in the 90s, didn't it? Wow.
They're like
Still
three
going,
fingers.
huh?
They're like
Yeah.
fingers on the picture. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant picture. Okay. So the other interesting item in the news that we were talking about is the best of the iPhone Photographic Awards in 2024. I'll put a link down here on the screen that you can go and actually have a look at them all. These are the best shots allegedly, I'm going to say that, taken on an iPhone in the last year, because there was a little bit of controversy over that. So I think, Damo, you saw this first. What did you think?
Well, I've entered into the competition, and you've got to do everything on your iPhone. So you can't take the image off your iPhone. You've got to do all the editing on the iPhone and submit on the iPhone, which isn't as straightforward as you think it can be. But so I do it with my Snapseed and put it all together in, and then I think my pictures look good until I see the winners, and then I think to myself, if only I could have taken that picture, because the composition, the first prize, I really like the aquarium one, because it's got that young child looking spellbound at the shark into the tank. I thought that was a really good one. What was really nice to see is that Verity Milligan was in there. She got second prize place for her abstract picture, which was taken in Northumberland. And again, it just shows that if you've got the eye and you've got the composition, then that's what makes this competition. Whether it's an iPhone or not, or whether it's the big cameras or that, obviously we're going to have a chat about that. But it's always nice to see what people can do, and it makes you. Well, it's for me, it spurs me on to think, oh, I can see why they got that. Like the repetition of the yellow bathing caps and things that possibly are just there, and those people are just in the right place and have got the composition just right. I like them.
Some
For
stunning
those who
images.
you mentioned Verity there, Verity joined us in our previous incarnation. We had a lovely interview and chat with her. We're hoping to bring her back onto the show for further talks and chats and look at these photographs. I think we may have a link to the previous interview. I'll see if I can find that for you. Ian, what were your views on the awards?
Oh, images are awesome, but the only thing that struck me when I was looking at them earlier was, in 2024, do you need a separate competition for iPhone photography anymore?
Yeah, yeah. A good
Because
point.
because it's become so mainstream, why does there need to be a separation between images taken on a compact camera, SLR, mirrorless, and the smartphone? I get there's different competitions and there'll always be all these different categories, but it just struck me that actually there used to be a bit more of a blurring between the lines, didn't there? You know, years ago there was a marked difference between iPhone quality and, the top range SLRs, but
Yeah.
now, I just don't know if there's a need for it as such.
It probably will die out, I'd imagine, as you say. I hadn't thought of that. The only uniqueness of it is that you have to do everything and submit everything on the iPhone. So you're not allowed to go out and do you can use Lightroom on the and your Photoshop on the iPhone, and let's assume they can, with the EXIF data, they can check if you've done that. But that's the only thing that's really makes it a bit different.
Is
Is
it
it
limited
is
to
this
iPhones
competition?
only? Sorry,
Is this competition not a marketing thing from Apple?
I don't know if it's owned by the people from Apple. I don't know who owns it.
I was going
I'm
to say, is it limited to just iPhones, or can it be any camera phone?
It does say the best of iPhone photography
iPhones,
award,
it
so I
must
think
be.
it
Yeah,
is,
that was
specific to
what
iPhone.
I'd heard, that some images have been submitted not taken on an iPhone, which caused a little bit of consternation.
Well,
But the point you make there, Ian, is very interesting. How long will it be before something like Landscape of the Year is won by an iPhone or a camera photograph? right?
Yeah,
Same as
yeah.
Ian. Sorry, Neil. You submitted to the Photographic Institute, didn't you?
Yeah.
Would they accept
Yeah,
camera
they do. And
photographs?
there's people who've got their there's a guy that was traveling on a train every day, and he was doing just using a phone, and his whole submission was done on a phone, and he was doing the ICM, so intentional camera movements, and taking images of landscapes. The whole thing was done on a phone.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter. It's about the image, as Ian says. It's about the
exactly.
image, not about what
Yeah.
it was taken on. I mean,
Yeah.
does anybody
Yeah.
care whether, you know, the picture Damo's got behind him's on a phone, a DSLR, or whatever? It's a picture. It's
Yeah.
an image.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I
But
mean,
is
one of the worst questions you get sometimes from, people starting out in photography when they see a really good image, and I've probably done it myself in the past. You see a great image, and your first instinct is, what did you take it on, and what was the
I
lens?
know,
And
I know, I
it
know.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter, you know.
yeah.
Mm.
But then
I
is
was
But that
that
just shows naivety, really, I think.
Yeah,
and is
I
it
mean, and you just reminded me, there's a really good local photographer called Black Country Type, Type, and he goes around the Black Country taking shop front pictures on his iPhone. He cycles around, take pictures, and he's just been given an award by the Photographic Society and been interviewed, and it's all done on the iPhone, or not the iPhone, but it's all phone photography, and they're nice, crisp pictures, but then the composition really is what makes it stand out.
is there still some inbuilt snobbery about if it's not taken on a proper camera, a big heavy big SLR, then it can't be considered to be a real photograph. But as you say,
I think that's going, isn't it? I
it
think there
has to.
was.
It has
it's
to.
still there in
Mm.
some circles, I think.
Yeah,
I was
but I
I
think
was at there was a buskers event, one of the local towns here, and I'd volunteered as a photographer. And when I met the guy who had arranged the photographers, there's 5 of us. The first thing he said to me, rather than how you doing, what sort of stuff do you do, he asked me what camera I had, and it was like, well, it doesn't matter what camera I've got.
Yeah. Oh, you've only
no.
got a Canon 60 instead of a 5S. Oh,
Yeah.
dear, oh
And
dear.
Although I
was
guess
he was
I
stood
guess
there
if
with
you
he was stood there with a Leica.
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you turned up to an event that you was being paid to shoot and you turned up with an iPhone, you might,
But
you
it's
might get
strange.
some looks, I suppose.
Each year, I belong to Elmo, the London Macintosh Users Group, and we have a photo shoot each year. We do it different times of the year, and people turn up with a huge range of cameras, everything from literally a Kodak snappy thing, right up to people who've got £10,000 DSLRs. But some people turn up with an iPhone or a
Yeah.
there are other makes available, obviously. They turn up with different types of smartphones. And it's interesting that when we put the competition together, all the pictures are shown blind, so no one knows who's taken which picture. Each photographer submits 5 photographs. I think in the past, a couple of you actually acted as judges on some of them. So you have no idea what it's taken on, and it's purely, is it a good photograph? And again, like we've discussed many times about photo competition, what one person thinks is a good photograph compared to someone else, it's really dynamic, the range of what people think. But you tend to find one or two will always percolate up. Maybe not the best chosen from each person, but they're in enough second and third places that will be the winning photography. So
I mean,
so
at the end
so
of the
what we're saying to people is you shouldn't be put off by saying, oh, if I haven't got a proper camera, I can't go out and take
Mm.
proper photographs. Go out and take them. But
at the end of
please
the
do it in
day,
landscape. Everyone's shooting portrait on a phone. It's just, oh, please.
it depends what you're going to do with the image as well. I mean, if you're
Mm.
just going to consume it on your phone, then phone's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I mean, you can even take those images and blow them up pretty well as well. So unless you're going to stick it up to a poster size or something, or
Well, I mean, you say that, but what's the iPhone? What's the latest iPhone? 48 megapixels now, isn't it? The
Yep.
latest
yeah,
one?
Yeah,
Oh, it's
for
mad.
8K video, 4K,
Yeah.
4 and 8K
Mm.
video, And if you think about it as well, what are most people going to look at it on? It's on a monitor. So if you haven't got anything like a 4K monitor, it doesn't matter what the picture's taken on, whether it's the best DSLR you've ever had or an iPhone. So again, it's how it's viewed, as you say, it's and what you can do with it. Like yourselves, like Damo is going to be on BBC on my 85-inch LCD, then I expect better quality, you know. So, okay, right, lovely. Okay, so let's move on to interesting bits of new kit that we've seen. So we're going to look at some new kit that we found in our trawls through the internet and what we've been finding. The first one we're going to talk about is this new SanDisk 8 terabyte card. It's just phenomenal. Who saw this? Ian, you saw this at first, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'd say is I would never use an 8 terabyte card because I think that's
I
just
bet
ludicrous.
you've bought two of them, haven't you?
No, no. Um, I, you can, it says you can approximately get 165,000 raw files at 24 megapixels. It's mad. They haven't actually released the price yet, but the 1 terabyte goes for 135 quid. So these cards are, they're not going to be cheap, and they're probably not going to be the fastest either. Yeah, just mad. I mean, it just blows my mind. I had a look earlier. My first computer had a hard drive of 1.2 gigabytes.
Yeah, the floppy
And
disk.
First hard drive ever changed was 30 megabytes. And it was the
Yeah,
size of a
and
shoebox.
and this little SD card is 8,000 gigabytes. I mean, it's just
Well, I can think of a few people that it might be useful for. There's a whole bunch of people out there that don't ever get round to taking the photos off the card. At least they've never run out of space.
Yeah, but if you lose the card, you've lost your life.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The
And if it
one
goes
thing
wrong,
though, I will say with that kind of card, if you're doing video on a DSLR, if you're doing now 4 and now 8K, that just gobbles up space like no one's business. So that I could see if that's what you're trying to do. But our friend Jeff Cable was saying, I was reading a blog of his, and he was saying that he took 7,500 photographs in one session, one like hour and a half, 2 hour session of sports, all on one card, all on one charge of the battery. So that shows you what these cards can hold.
Even if you're a professional photographer, though, you would split it up.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
You wouldn't put your eggs in one basket.
No.
No, he's shooting that with two cards in a camera.
Yeah.
And using one as a backup.
Yeah. Imagine being one of those people that doesn't download your pictures, and then a couple of years later you think, "Oh, I'll download that memory card," and then you plug it into the computer, and your computer goes, "You haven't got enough storage space to download this memory card because you've only got like a 1 terabyte hard drive or something. You've got 8 terabytes on your card."
or the dreaded message, formatting error. We can't read this card. It's terrible.
Probably this story is more about for SanDisk is their capability, that what they can do.
Yeah, it's the technology, isn't it?
I mean, if that was a fast card, it'd get super hot as well.
How much is it? Any idea of cost on it?
No price yet. 100, but the 1 terabyte is 135. So this is 8 terabytes.
Yeah.
So.
I've got dual cards in my Z9. They're 256 gig, and I don't think I've ever got more than halfway.
Yeah, I mostly stick to 128 cards, and I've got a dozen of them, and I routinely clear them onto my external hard drive and use it.
And I've mini hard drives that I take with me.
Yeah.
They're like 1 terabyte drives that I'll stick all the photos on. So during the day, as I take the stuff off the camera, if I'm at a rugby event or something. Yeah.
I think Ian's trying to show us he's got a disc.
64 I can fill in a day.
No, I wouldn't get anywhere near filling it. No.
Yeah, but we're shooting different subject matter.
Oh yeah, I mean but also
the thing is,
7
guys,
frames a second.
Hang on.
It's all very well having one terabyte disc, but if you forget to bring it with you, which I often do, it's no point.
Yeah, and then you're charging around petrol stations trying to find out if they've got any cards, and they've got like an 8 gigabyte card is the only one they've got, and you think, okay, I'll have 6 of those, please, and it just gets ridiculous.
Or the worst one is you forget the cable to connect the camera or the card reader.
Yeah. The one that I was looking at, I mentioned earlier on, it's by Lexor, and it's a new 1 and 2 terabyte card that fits you plug it into the end of your phone. It's got a USB-C port on it. So plugging it into the phone automatically gives you that extra capacity on your iPhone demo, you like taking photographs, that gives you that extra storage, because most people buy smaller capacity phones. They only have what, maybe 256 of memory. And if you shoot any video, I shoot a lot of video on my phone. They've gone instantly. So that's really a really useful figure. And that's
I tell
works.
you
They're
what,
coming out about £300, which is not bad.
I tell you what's a good pastime. If you're on a long train journey or you're on the plane, is just go through your phone, deleting photographs that you haven't kept, and it passes the time of day really good. Well,
Damo, I don't think there's a train journey long enough for me to try and wipe out all the photographs I've got on my iCloud account. I think it was 135,000 last time I looked. So yeah. Okay. So moving on, we were looking at Sony have brought out a new lens, the FE85 f1.4 GM2. So I suppose the GM1 is their older one. Anyone using this who's up on Sony lenses?
well, I quite like my Canon 85mm lens. It doesn't come out often, but it's a great portrait lens, and it's a really nice lens. It's not used that often, but it gives a really crisp, nice picture. Now, I saw this on the internet, and the guy was showing the comparison, and there is a much crisper look to the Sony than the old ones out there. Whether you want to pay that premium to get that crisper, I suppose in the professional side, it really does make a change as a game changer. But it does look very nice. I would like one, but I'm quite happy to stick with my Canon at the moment.
Can you explain? Well, you said there it makes a good lens for portrait. Why is that? If I just take out my ordinary camera,
I
and
think
I've
it's
got
just on portraits. You can use a 50mm or 85, but 85's got a slight telephoto. So to me, it looks a more natural face when you're taking the portrait. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, I think Ian's about to jump in.
Well, Damo's just said it. So 85mm is supposedly gives you the most natural representation of a person. If you imagine, if you do a portrait at say 24mm and you get quite close to the person, their nose looks huge, and so their facial features look different, and that's as you go through the focal range, there'll be, just if you just Google it, there'll be good videos that you can watch where someone's done a portrait, or they do it at the different focal lengths, and you just see how the person changes through the different. When people go, "Oh, the video added £10 to me," I mean, there is actually some potential truth to that, in the sense of depending on the focal length.
Especially if you used a wide angle lens.
Yeah.
Is that to do with the way the focal length distorts the distance front to back? So if you have a telephoto lens, for example, everything seems to be flatter and pulled forward.
It's more distance to subject than it is the focal length. It gets complicated, but if you get close to a person with a 24mm lens, for example, then the nose would look big because it's so close to the camera. So you distort. Yeah,
so it changes the perspective of what the face would look like.
I mean, I quite like. I mean, a 50mm lens gives a very nice result, and I've also used a 70-200 for some for portrait shots. But I always like the 85 when it is a little bit of a luxury because it doesn't come out that often. But when I do bring it out, I do find I get a nice shot with it. A really nice.
Yeah, there's a few people that like you get 105 macro lenses are quite good as well.
Yeah,
portraiture, or Nikon do a 135 as well.
And that 1.4, that means it's quite a fast lens.
So it gets the light and it's fast, and you just got to be careful with your focusing though. Really, careful. Because if you don't get the eyes right, and you're on especially if you're on automatic, you throw everything out very quickly.
Yeah.
You look at this great picture on the screen, and then you go, and then you put it on the computer and you think, oh, I'm not in focus.
Because 1.4 is such a shallow depth of field. Yeah. If you focus on the eye, or maybe if you're one of these people that focus and then compose, that's probably the worst thing to do, because you focus, and then if you slightly move the camera, you've shifted that plane of focus, and you literally would only have to not move very far, and you could lose that focus.
But if you're in focus, it's brilliant.
Mm.
And how much is that lens?
I forgot what the price was.
1,800 quid for the Sony.
That's right. Yeah.
I think
Oh,
if
buy
you
two.
if you can afford to pay £1,800 for a lens, I think you should be able to take a photo in focus. Could you? Crying out loud. Okay, lovely. Okay, so another one to put on the wish list, I suppose.
Well, if they want to send us one to review and a Sony
could do,
body,
you
because
could
none of
do.
us shoot Sony, but you know.
Yeah.
I've actually written to Canon saying that we're now an important part of the Camera Podcast Society, and would they like to let us have a couple of R1s just for us to pass our comments as well? So I
They're
haven't
still
heard
not
back
in
from them
stock.
yet. So we'll keep abreast of that one.
They might misinterpret it and send us a couple of Canon film cameras. Or
That's right. Okay, right. So what we want to talk about in the last half of the show, we touched on it last show, is about light and lighting of your photographs, and how important a part of the whole process of getting a photograph to look good is to understand light. So the guys are going to talk a little bit about their experience, about what they like and what they don't like. And we will come to James's question during this process. So I'm going to start off with Neil. Neil has sent us in a couple of images which we're going to show up here. Neil, talk us through. I'm going to show the Kingfisher one here. Do you want to?
Yeah,
talk us through? This is the double Kingfisher one. So
yes, it's the same Kingfisher on the same branch, taken from two different angles, about 45 degrees apart, and within 30 seconds of each other, if not less. So I was in a hide, and I had the advantage of being able to take a picture from one side of the hide or the other side. Now you can see in one, it's a really sort of bright sort of blue that we associate with the Kingfisher. And it's a lovely color. It's one of my favorite birds, it has to be said. But from the other side, it's looking more like a greenish aqua sort of color. And it's all to do with the bird's feathers. The bird's feathers are actually brown, so they tell me, but I've never seen them as brown. But the coloration, the structure of the cells in the feathers reflect light differently depending on what angle you are. So the light hasn't actually changed on the bird. The camera position has, and hence the reflected light has changed color.
So where is the light coming from? What direction is the light coming from?
So the light coming from that is coming onto the back of the Kingfisher.
Right.
So it's coming over its shoulder effectively.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over the back of the Kingfisher. Hence you get this beautiful coloration of the feathers on its back. But then by shifting round, that color changes. It's gone from being a really bright, vibrant blue to more of a green, sort of aqua sort of color. It's changed a lot. And I did take another picture as well later on when the bird was actually in shade. So the bird had turned 90 degrees, and the feathers, there's still quite a stripe down the back where the light was catching it. But it's the bird itself is almost the kind of this muddy sort of blacky brown color, which was quite interesting. I ended up getting fascinated by the coloration, but yeah, so the way light strikes an object can be very different, as well as light moving if you physically move as well. So the angle of which the light strikes it can make a subject quite interesting.
Ian?
I think it's a great example, because if you look at it, although the colour of the bird has changed, the background, the blues, yes, there's a difference, but
yeah,
there's not a difference in the colour of the blues in the background. There's a difference in the luminosity of the blues in the background.
Yeah,
and even the branch itself is the same coloration. So it's, you can believe what Neil is saying. What I'm saying, because he's not. If you try to alter the colours of the image, then the whole image would be a different colour. Whereas the blues have remained consistent, and it's the fact that the bird has changed.
And what time of day? Now you've mentioned it before in the past about this, what you call the golden hour. Okay.
This image was taken around about 9 a.m. in the morning, so it's well after the sun's up, but it's still rising at that point.
So this gives a more blue cast to the light. Is that correct?
So I happen to know a spot where the Kingfisher is normally there about 8 o'clock on the dot. But this one day, it seemed there was a pair, and they were hanging around. Yeah, they are.
to lie in.
They come out fishing that time of day, that sort of spot. It's
That shows
humour.
dedication when you know the times the birds are going to turn up, doesn't it? I like that, you know. So looking at his watch, you're
Well,
bloody late.
he's
What are you
never
up to?
always.
You arguing
I
with
know
the
it's
missus or
Switzerland,
something?
you know, and you set our watches by these things, but yeah, you can't quite set your watch by him.
Okay.
But yeah, he was lucky enough to come really close as well. So yeah,
Damo, you're very keen on, as we can see in your background, about reflections. So how does that affect the light that you work with? What are you looking for when you're planning a picture like the one behind you?
Reflections can be a bit tricky because the light in a reflection can be a bit darker than the light on the top. That hasn't been photoshopped, that one, but sometimes you will go into Lightroom and up the light on the reflection because it's a little bit there's less light on the reflection. Sorry, go on, Ian.
I was just going to say, so a reflection is typically one stop darker
Yes.
than and I think you have to be a little bit careful lightening the reflection too much, because if you make it the same as the area it's reflecting, then you kind of miss the point of it being a
Yes, and
reflection.
you
Like
make it look a bit false.
it
Yeah.
should be a little bit darker than the area it's reflecting.
Yeah.
And what do you expose for then? The sky or the reflection?
The sky, really. I mean, it very much depends. A lot of these reflections, I'm down on my knees with an iPhone in a bloody puddle. Sorry, sure. Beat that bit out. From an iPhone in a puddle.
Damo, it's okay to mention iPhone. We don't censor.
And I can't really see what I'm doing, but I've got an idea that I'm going to get a good reflection when I'm down there. It's just a different view because the eye actually gets fooled a little bit by the different view, not so much on the lighting and stuff. But I mean, maybe I just I get a bit lucky with the light effect on it and stuff. I put a picture which I'm really proud of, my poppy field, in about light. And if you see the picture that I've got up here now with the background, you can see I used my Fujifilm. I set it up, and the sun is just creeping over the hill at Kinver Edge, and then the light is just actually diffracted by the trees, and then it's lit up all the poppies in a row at the bottom. And I was quite chuffed with that picture. Just because shooting into the sun is so tricky and getting it all, getting everything, the compensation right and everything like that. And by sheer fluke, in some ways, that picture came out quite nicely with the light down at the bottom.
so I think it's what's important to note in all of this is that the subject is lit. Because if your subject's not lit, I mean, sometimes you don't want the subject lit.
No, yes, that's right.
You might want a silhouette, for instance. So in the picture behind me, the sun is rising over the mountains behind me, so the boat is silhouetted against it, and that's quite a nice effect. But if you're photographing a subject like a person, then you want the person lit, or the bird, or whatever it is. So it's really important, I always find, that to know where the sun's going to be, so that you're looking at the subject that's lit and it's not in the dark. It's really so for wildlife and birds, and especially with sport as well. If it's not well lit, then it is really difficult, and you do start to push your equipment.
You do,
Is
yeah.
this why you see when you watch some of the things, if they're taking pictures of I don't know, a model on a beach, and they're shooting into the light, they'll have someone with a big reflector thing
Yeah.
bouncing the light back onto the subject. And would you even use fill-in flash in a situation like that? If the backlight was so strong, you're just going to get, you know, a silhouette. So you would think about how you light that as a separate issue.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, I've also got a picture of Lily, my granddaughter, in here, and I love window light. Window light is really great, just because I only have a snap second with my granddaughter where I can actually get her sorted out. I mean, the background could be better, but it's just nice to get the light from the window capturing the face, and it's falling off and a bit dark on the side. So they're always the four grandchildren always get photographed. I notice Ian does the same with his two. They just you've got about a short window, and I'm really quick to get the picture, but I do like to sort of capture pictures of them. And I now it pushes me when I'm doing my 100 strangers photograph to get people. Somebody on Saturday I met. I wanted a picture, and then he said, "Yeah, go ahead and take." He's a photographer, and suddenly I've got about a 30-second window to get a picture of him. Where's the light coming from? What's happening? What's this? Have I got the right f-stop and everything like that? And it really pushes you into making sure you light the subject up. So I do like portrait photography.
Ian, you take a lot of landscapes. So again, this golden hour comes into what you're doing and what you're planning with your shots, does it?
Yeah, early mornings and late evenings, because
Yeah.
I mean you can get shots in the middle of the day, but it is challenging because that the light is that much harsher. So yeah, like the one behind me, that was at the end of the day. You see with Neil's early morning, I assume that one was.
Yeah.
There's just there's a better quality of light, and tends to be a warmer light as well, first thing, whereas during the middle of the day it's a bluer light and not as pleasing on the eye. So yeah, definitely. I mean, going back to Damo's poppy image, that's a really tricky shot to do, because there's two things. There's one, when you point the camera at the sun like that, it's going to want to underexpose it. It's going to really want to shut down the exposure because into the sun. There would be a tendency to try and expose for the sun, but then the poppies would be black. So whilst you can't see the definition of the sun, that's not important. People worry about, some people might look at that and go, well, the sky's overexposed, but it's going to be bright because you're looking into the sun. So you don't need that detail there. The key is the light that's hitting those poppies, and then keeping that bit of sky in the shot informs you of where that light is coming from. There you go.
I like the fact that I caught it. It looks like a sunburst, but in fact it's not a sunburst. It's the shadows of the trees have actually split the light.
Yeah, I see that now. Yeah, it's a great shot. Yeah, I love it.
Okay. So we covered that. That's great. So no, I don't want you all to rush here, guys. It's just calm procedure. We're going to ask James's question, right? So it's a big moment, big drum roll. So James,
no pressure.
James has asked, and I'll read the question. It says, I guess I'm interested in how you take good shots in dark situations. My outdoor photos are always just black with an area lit up by a flash. What can I do without a flash? I guess this ties in with tonight's subject. So who wants to have a go at helping James take these? I presume he's talking about photographs in the dark rather than just in the day.
So it really depends what he's photographing and then how he should approach it. So I'll speak from the sports kind of side. So I do a lot of sports where we have either indoor with bad lighting, or as I had this week, I had a football match that started as before the sun went down, finished in the dark under floodlights. So the problem there is your hand holding. It's dark, so you're really starting to push your exposure. So the simple answer is you need a lens with a very wide aperture. So whatever the widest aperture you've got, that's what you need to go for. And whether that's 4.5 or 2.8 or 1.4, whatever it is, you use that. The next thing you need to do is you need to figure out what you're photographing and what sort of shutter speed you need. Now, if I'm photographing sport, I need a minimum of 1,000th of a second. I can sometimes get away with 800ths, but you need something in that range. So I'm already fixed with my aperture. It's fully wide open. I can't change that. My shutter speed has to be relatively fixed at a fast shutter speed because I want to capture the action mostly. So then that basically leaves down to the only other thing I can change is the ISO. So then you have to crank up your ISO. Now you have to understand your equipment and what for you is an acceptable amount of noise due to the ISO. So I know on my Nikon Z9, I mean, it'll go up to 256,000 on the ISO, but I'll never shoot above 6,000, 6,400 to be exact. So the photographs I took of the other day, I actually got it, I physically set the ISO to 4,000, and I was shooting everything at the end of the game at 4,000 ISO. But at the beginning of the game, I was down about 400. And it's just that change of light throughout the game that's caused the change. But you need to be in control of your settings to be able to get something decent. If you leave it for the camera, you only have to point that camera towards a light source, and it will just change all your settings. Your ISO will get reduced down, your shutter speed will be increased, and you'll end up with a black image, or at least the people will be black. You know, you have a nice bright light that's nicely exposed, but you won't be able to see anyone. So it's about getting the exposure right. And if you're hand holding, the other thing you need to know is what shutter speed can you hold handhold? And a general rule of thumb is it's 1 over the length of the lens. So if you have a 200mm lens, it's 200th of a second. Now with modern cameras and the stability and stuff, you can probably go down below that, but it's what you're comfortable with, what you can shoot. And beyond that, you're looking at using a tripod, which for sports is not a practical thing to do. So from a sports point of view, I'm always looking at using a fast lens with a wide aperture, fixing my shutter speed, and then I have to compromise with the ISO, and that really depends on the lighting from the event. I'm not allowed to use flashes, so flashes don't even come into it. And I can't light it. I couldn't put my own light up, so if someone runs close to me, then they're in the light. I have to rely on the light of the place. So the only other thing I can do is I can move. So a lot of places have uneven lighting on pitches. You might find the side with the large stand is much better lit. So you bias your shooting on that side of the pitch. Other than that, there's not a lot else you can do. You just have to compromise to a large degree.
Okay, interesting. Ian, what would your view on that be?
Well, I think Neil did a very good job of covering that. See, I mean, the key, I mean, if James can let us know what he's trying to shoot, that, I mean, that would help. But my first thoughts would be, as Neil said, would be a tripod, but that might not be an option. If you haven't got a tripod, depending on what you're taking, can you rest the camera on a wall, or there's sort of different things you can do in that sense. But it does depend what you're shooting. But understanding your exposure triangle, I mean, Neil did a brilliant job of explaining it there. Essentially, he's thinking about his exposure triangle, his aperture, the shutter speed that he needs to use for the subject, and then he's compensating by adjusting his ISO.
The one thing I know I found the problem is if your setting is down as fast as the lens will go 2.8, right? That doesn't give you very much focal distance, does it? Your focus has got to be spot on. If you want more of the image in focus and you're trying to crank up to f8 or something like that, again, you're starting to get outside the envelope of an exposure that you can't. You say try and balance all three, but if one of them is out of balance, you're not going to get an exposure. Is that am I right on that?
And the other thing to consider is if it depends how dark it is. I mean, my camera, because it's getting on a bit. I mean, if it's too dark, it won't focus. So then you need to think about going into manual focus and manually focusing, because otherwise you just find that the focus will just hunt. It just can't. There's not enough contrast there to lock on. But again, the newer cameras have got even better at that as well.
But you can always find, this day and age, you can usually find a light. If you're focusing if you're photographing a landscape, you could find, and especially if it's a clear night, you find yourself a star or a distant light from a house or something, and manually focus on that, so it's as sharp as you can get it, and then for everything else will be in focus relative to that. If it's a landscape, you'll do pretty good.
Okay.
The one thing,
Damo, you do some portrait work. What are you looking at in lighting for portraits and that kind of?
well, it's interesting that he's saying that his subject comes out white, and I think some of the compacts have got some very clever programs on them that do nighttime flash work, so you can actually take a picture with the person standing on the balcony and the background also set out in the same exposure, so the person stands out a little bit. And I quite like rear curtain flash, where the shutter opens up for about a second or so, and then the flash comes in at the end. So you pick out the subject against the background, and maybe that's what he's after, a picture of somebody or subjects in the foreground, and he also wants the background as well. Could be, again, we're back to what, but I quite like city lights. So, and if you're in the city lights, it can be frustrating because you might want to get a nice city light picture. You've got to have a tripod, and then once you start slowing the shutter speed down, you get some nice effects of the big wheel blurring, the light trails and stuff like that. So that's always good fun to do, where you slow time down, so to speak, with the exposure. But I'm just thinking, listening to what that question is, whether you could just get a compact with a pre-program that sets the picture you want of the subject at night. I don't know what people think.
I think the issue is sometimes people think, oh, set it on A or set it on P and it will do everything. But as you pointed out, Neil, the camera will try and do its best, but it will see one little part of the photograph. Oh, great, there's a candle over there, I can expose for that, and everything else is ruined. Or it sees a street light and overexposes everything. It doesn't work. So
it's actually less difficult than people think to use your camera in manual.
Yeah,
it's just about knowing those three things and getting a balance to get it there. Yeah, you got unidentified flying phone.
There's no substitute.
The iPhone algorithm works really well, and you might just want to bite the bullet and say, "I'll take the picture of the iPhone," because the algorithm
Why not?
Picks up the portrait mode and everything on it.
I have to admit, I went down years and years ago to the Tower of London, where they had this poppy display. They put all these poppies into the moat, 4,000 odd.
Oh yes, I remember that. It was lovely. Yeah.
So I went down there to photograph it. I took all the kit, everything, tripods, lens, everything. Took loads and loads of photographs, and my daughter was with me, and she took a picture on her iPhone, and the bloody thing came out better than anything I'd taken. It was so annoying, and I tried every conceivable setting, combinations of that triangle at it, upside down, twisted round, you name it. Nope, still couldn't. Something wasn't quite right somewhere. So yeah, it just goes to show. But the whole fun of it is to get out there and try. And the nice thing with digital photography now is you can go out, you can take half a dozen. That doesn't work, take another half dozen and keep changing something till what it gets.
Yeah, get yourself an 8 terabyte card and just keep going.
165,000 shots. All right. Yeah. Now, if I tried that with the moon, I might get one. I might get a shot on the moon, which kind of brings me round. Next, I said in the last show I was going to do my intro, but I haven't had a chance to find one decent photograph out of the 135,000 that's in the file. So I will be doing that, and next show I'll frighten you all to death with the saga of Martin and photography. So as we said last month, we were asking what people were getting up to. What's your plans for this month, Ian?
I've got no plans, literally. It's terrible. No, my macro season has just fallen flat on its face. The local cemetery that I mentioned before, I went there.
You're not going flat on your face, local cemetery.
Yeah, not last night, the night before, and they've mowed it. The council have completely gutted it, and I'm really annoyed because I get that they need to do it, but it's a little bit too early because there was plenty of bees and that still around, and they've butchered it. So yeah, I'm at a bit of a loose end now.
Okay, Damo, anything planned for this month?
Yes, I've been looking around for a course to do, something to push me, and there's a network called the Prism Network that are doing a documentary. So there's a really up and coming street area in Birmingham called Sturchley. And there's a young documentary photographer, and she's running a course. And over the next 10 weeks, we're going to be given different themes to go around the area, while taking pictures of along different themes. And then at the end, she's then going to help us to select our pictures, and then we're going to do an exhibition of the area. So I'm looking forward to it. It should be really good. And there's a couple of friends who are in the local IGAs groups who are joining up as well. So it's going to be very different. It's a new challenge. It's different than going out just doing one-to-one on a landscape, one-to-one on macro. This is about documentary, getting to know the community. And so that should be good. I'll let you know how I get on with it.
Can I just clarify? Did you say prism or prison?
It's called the Prism Network.
Prism. That's okay.
Prism,
I
Prism,
thought,
not Prism.
I thought you were going around all these jails around the
I am
UK
locked
taking
in for
photographs.
that week, so I mean,
Yeah, they're letting Damo out on day release. That's where it's
Yeah.
just take some photographs. Yeah.
The ankle bracelet's rubbing a bit, I guess.
Dodgy, are you up to anything? Have you got anything?
Yeah,
floating
so
around?
rugby season kicks off here next weekend. So that's
Ah.
me on Saturday. Be shooting the first 15 again, Neon Rugby Club. I'm hoping to get accreditation for Switzerland, Spain, which is in Geneva. That's my accreditation's in. They haven't refused it yet, so that's good news so far.
Good.
And yeah, I've got a whole bunch of triathlon photos I need to finish. And if the weather plays ball this week, I may get up and do some early morning stuff, but I need to find a new location to change things up a bit. But yeah, the sports all kicking off with me, so that's good. And November will bring international rugby again, so I'm looking forward to that. I've got to plan a few trips.
Great, great. Well, my big thing is not next month, but we're off to Aussie for a holiday in November.
very good.
So I'm going to be hopefully going to get some decent shots when I do that.
You're going to
Okay.
Sydney.
We're going to Sydney and then up to the Gold Coast, and then we're coming back and we're spending a few days in Singapore. So that should be interesting as well.
Fantastic.
Look forward to that. So Ian, we know where you can get hold of it. Dodgy, you've now done the same.
Yeah, I've copied them. We've actually been,
Oh,
at least on my screen this week.
Yeah.
Ian's below me, so we're on the sunrise sunset half.
Yeah, but
Screen.
Damo and me are still old-fashioned. Damo, how can people get hold of you?
just look for Damo. Just search Damo on the internet, and hopefully you'll find me.
Okay, great. And you can find me, you can find martinkelly@mac.com on email address or on the Flashbang Wallet website. We were still looking for even more questions. We had our first question, which was great. Thank you, James, for that. But anyone else, please send in your questions or any queries about what we've been talking about tonight. Very welcome. And we hopefully can discuss and chat those as well. So good night to all the lads. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
See ya.
And good night to all our viewers. We'll see you all in the next show. Thanks very much. Good night.